Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the afternoon edition of Just in the Nick of Crime. You have made it. I could probably word that better so it's more clever. Nevertheless, we are going to be delving into the afternoon end of day recap on the Diddy trial. It is day 8 of the total trial since jury selection began, and it is the third day. Cassie has been testifying. She'll be testifying going in tomorrow, but we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. I just want to make something really clear, though, for everybody who's watching on Insta, TikTok, YouTube. If you're watching this one, we have been doing midday recaps as well. So basically everything that happens from the morning until they go to lunch, that is in a completely separate video, and it won't be referenced here. And this is basically everything from when they get back to lunch until court adjourns for the day. So that's what we're going to be doing here. Now, next week, while I'm out of town, we will be doing one recap. It'll be the end of the day. It'll do everything. That video will be probably longer than any of us want, but I'll try to do just the high points and make it a lot more tolerable for everybody. But a lot happened today. I also think things might get a little bit lighter next week when Cassie's not on the stand. Cassie is the star witness. She has the most information. She is the reason why this whole thing is happening altogether. So I think too, once her part of the testimony is over, things might become a little bit easier as far as rolling and getting the updates done. But that being said, if you want to know what you missed at the beginning part of the day, you can check out YouTube, the video that was done right before this under my live section, or Substack. I've been putting the notes up there as well. I have not put the afternoon notes on Substack yet. I will do them hopefully some point after this afternoon or evening. Also, lastly, TikTok people, keep tapping that screen. I appreciate it. And it will be a sub live tonight on TikTok, probably sometime after 9:30 Central Time. That being said, let's just get right into it. I don't have pictures. I don't have any of that other stuff. Let's just get right into what happened today. So the first thing that I want to start off with is the fact that we are going to put a rumor to bed. One of the things since the arrest happened, since the raids happened, where they took over 1,000 large bottles of baby oil from Diddy's house, okay? The rumor has been there was GHB in it. It was laced with some form of substance. Well, that came up today while Cassie was on the stand, and I am here to tell you that it has now been definitively confirmed that that is just a rumor. There was nothing in the baby oil other than baby oil. That was it. No substances, nothing else. Cassie confirmed that today. I believe it to be true because, believe me, she's got no reason to try to save this guy or help him out with anything like that. What we did learn from earlier is that, one, he liked the large bottles of Johnson & Johnson's baby oil. That was his preferred go-to, and he liked them to be heated. But that's it. So, yeah, no, getting into it too, I'll tell you. So before the break, there was a lot of text messages that we went to. So if you go watch, or you were here for the midday update, or you watched the midday update, or you go back and do it, you're going to hear a lot of conversation around text messages. Some were so explicit that we couldn't read or talk about, but the jurors got to see them. And apparently, during this whole text and email heavy testimony, jurors were leaning. I'm going to describe how they reacted to it. They leaned forward in their seats to follow along as monitors displayed the often lurid messages in front of the jury box. One woman shook her head from side to side as a particularly explicit message was shown. A man stared intently at the screen, pressing his thumb to his chin. Other jurors appeared curious and quizzical, some looking at Cassie or jotting notes. One man fell into a routine, peering at each message on the screen, then looking up at Estava, who was the defense attorney, as she asked Cassie about them. Some jurors appeared bored only when the courtroom fell silent for minutes at a time while Cassie reviewed lengthy text exchanges before answering questions, which would make sense. Now, one thing that happened when they got back from lunch is apparently the judges scolded the attorneys over Cassie. So apparently, before this all started, it had been universally agreed upon that Cassie would only testify this week. That's it. End of Friday. Because she is so close to having her baby, anything could happen. I mean, honestly, she could go into labor at any moment right now. That is how far along she is. And the judge was like, no, because she's pregnant, she's 8.5 months pregnant, we're going to allocate this time for her at the beginning. We're going to go through this, and it needs to be finished by the end of the week. And apparently, the lead attorney, Mark Agnifilo, suggested that Cassie could return on Monday. And let me tell you what the judge said specifically. So Mark suggested that Cassie Ventura could return Monday morning if needed for further questioning. And the judge said this: in what universe did you not understand this is what was going to happen? You're not telling me this wasn't everyone's understanding that this witness was going to be done this week. The judge dressed them down over it. So Cassie is done. The judge is looking out for her well-being, and I appreciate it. I'm going to tell you, I really like this judge. I feel like he's very fair. I feel like he's really looking out for Cassie, for the witnesses, and I think he's doing it while trying to be fair and impartial. I think that this is a really good judge. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about is some things that legal analysts had mentioned that I thought was interesting that you guys would want to know, which is talking about how Cassie's testimony sets up the arguments on both sides, and this is according to several experts. Basically, her testimony has created a foundation for both the prosecution and defense to build their arguments during the remainder of this trial. Basically, Ventura's answers to the questions from both sides would be further reinforced by expert witnesses, and the prosecution expected to bring in experts who will argue that Ventura's testimony meets the psychological threshold for coercion, suggesting that she was under Combs's control. They will likely argue that her responses indicate that she was under the thumb of Sean Combs. So what they're saying is basically, from the prosecution standpoint, what Cassie is saying is textbook coercion, and that there is going to be experts that come in to testify toward that. However, on the other hand, the defense will likely present expert witnesses who will assert that Ventura was not coerced, emphasizing her independence and ability to leave the relationship if she so desired. Because remember, that's what they're trying to prove. They're not trying to prove that he wasn't abusive. They're trying to prove that she wasn't being coerced, because that's part of what's under the racketeering and the trafficking, right? So that's what their goal is to try to prove. And so he said, basically what they're saying is that now they can bring in witnesses with everything that they've kind of gone over today, and probably will go over tomorrow as well, that can say that she was there willingly, and she, on her own accord. Now, both legal teams are also going to focus on how her testimony aligns with the legal statutes that he's violating. The jury is going to be tasked with determining whether Cassie's participation was voluntary or whether it meets the legal definition of coercion and exploitation. The jurors will have to rely on their own gut feeling about whether Ventura was truly complicit or manipulated through the relationship. This was emphasized during a discussion between the lawyers and Judge Subramanian about the length of time Cassie would remain on the stand. The defense attorney, Mark Agnifilo, emphasized that Ventura is the most important witness in this case. So defense and prosecution both agree that Cassie is the most important witness in this case. It truly underscores her testimony playing a central role in shaping this trial's outcome. All right. And I want to say something real quick about the American justice system and juries. Don't you love it that you get 12 people? Someone could work at Subway. Someone could be a lawyer. And these people get to choose your fate. People with no law understand. Like, I don't have a law degree. I feel like I understand more than most. But I don't know if I would be qualified to determine what the legal definition of coercion is. I just feel like our system is a bit flawed in that way, that somebody, like anybody without any education on law and legalities, gets to make your decision. Like an 18-year-old pizza man could make your decision on whether or not you go to prison. It's bonkers, mind-boggling. Nevertheless, what we have is what we go with. Jury of your peers, I suppose. Anyways, let's talk about how industry clout. This is another one of those expert things that I thought was interesting that I should share with you guys. How expert industry clout helped Combs control Cassie's career and avoid consequences. And this was talked about by an expert, like a music editor. She's basically saying that Sean and this was very interesting because it'll tell you about what that 10-record deal means and the way that he handled it. And I thought this was fascinating. Basically, he controlled Cassie's career through both her record deal and his company and his significant influence on the music industry. Because you got to remember, back at that time, Bad Boy Records, Sean Combs was like the biggest deal out there at one point in time. From a ton of the big artists, rap artists from what I call, that late 90s, early 2000s golden age of rap, came out of Bad Boy Records, whether it was somebody that was on another track or it was him or the music that he produced behind the scenes. They recently uncovered, I say recently, like probably 5-6 years ago, uncovered where Diddy had actually redone a track on Ava Adore, the Smashing Pumpkins song, and had redone and reproduced the backbeat, and it's stellar. He's a great producer. I can't deny that. But he worked even outside of rap. He had such an influence on music, and means he can control an awful lot of things. But basically by 2011, remember, she had signed a 10-album deal. And by 2011, years after she signed it, one album had been released. She had hundreds of songs recorded, but one album released. She, at this time in 2011, was described as a mid-level star. And the expert also pointed out that while long-term deals were common in the industry, 7 albums was a typical standard. And the deals that were made were far less restrictive than the deals that Combs had made with Ventura. And he said that such a deal locks you up for your career and then some, which highlighted the immense control that Diddy had over Ventura's professional trajectory. But number one, she's young. She gets signed by bad boy artists with all of these promises, 10-record deal, one album ever comes out, and she's locked up. She can't do anything, and he controls the industry where she's trying to be. Now, despite his well-known temper and history of violent behavior in the industry, the fear that he instilled in others helped him to avoid consequences and keep many of his actions from ever coming to light. He was quoted as saying he was one of the most powerful people in the music business for 20-some years because he was so wealthy and because he had so many people who were willing to not only do what he wanted, but were very afraid to speak out against him. Again, this is somebody this is an expert in the music industry, not somebody who is on trial here, not somebody who is participating in this trial. Just somebody who knows him, knows the industry, which is why, again, I think this is incredibly interesting. Now, the person who's doing it, his name is Aswad. What's his first name? Sorry. I'll tell you who he is. Jim Aswad, who's the executive music editor of Variety. Okay. And he has been in the industry as long as Diddy has been in the industry. He mentioned that while Combs' violent reputation was known, the darker aspects of his behavior, including the free costs, remained largely hidden. He said, I did not hear about a lot of those things that are coming to light right now, and neither did a lot of people I know. Which basically what he's saying, unless he's just full of it, is that even though these free costs were happening, they were kept to such a small group of people that were not willing to speak on it, that a lot of people outside of this circle that he was in didn't really know about it. Now, Cassie's going to return to the stand tomorrow. Lawyers said but here's the thing. Lawyers said that they don't expect to be done questioning her until the end of day on Friday, meaning that we can assume that Cassie is going to be on the stand all day tomorrow. And if it happens, it's possible she'll need to come back to the court Monday, which we talked about a minute ago. That's why the judges yelled at them. So prosecutors can ask her more questions during the phase of testimony, known as redirect. So basically what they're saying here is that Cassie's going to get done with the defense, and the prosecution might need her back so they can do redirect, which is basically go through and question some of what defense had done and get some things clarified that was done first at the very beginning. So that's interesting. But again, Judge Subramanian noted that both sides, both of them, prosecution and defense, had agreed that she would be done by week's end, since she is due to give birth to her third child literally any day now. He said that there has been pretrial discussions for months about the need to finish Cassie's testimony this week. Months, y'all. And guess what? They didn't. And let me tell you something. When you've had a discussion like this and you've had these things on the radar and you're not holding true to your agreement, and you have a judge, that's not going to look good for the judge. Now, the other thing that you have to keep in mind too is that initially the defense did not expect testimony with Cassie to go the way that it did. They've had to completely revamp what they're doing. And personally, what we've seen today, and I talk about this more in depth in the earlier recap we did, they have been fumbling over themselves and kind of all over the place. It doesn't seem to be a very put together defense questioning, because she's been so poised and flawless and consistent in her testimony that I guess that's not what defense was expecting from her. But she has been, so they've had to pivot on that, and it's not really showing out. It's not really showing well, in my opinion, in their behavior, or in their outcome, I should say. Maybe not their behavior, but their outcome. But yeah, for months, they have been trying to get this set up and had agreed that it would be done this week. Now, Agnifila has tried. Diddy's lead attorneys blame prosecutors, saying it seems strategic that they called 2 other witnesses before Cassie, and suggesting that they did so in an effort to limit cross-examination. Diddy's lawyers suggest that prosecutors want to limit the questioning, and Yeah, and that's why they did it as an effort to limit the cross-examination. So I had that same note in there twice. Um, the judge basically told the defense finish its cross in the morning Friday to leave time for prosecutors to ask Cassie follow-up questions. He left the open possibility that Cassie might have to return to the witness stand next week, although he's clearly not happy about it. But the judge is trying very diligently to limit Cassie's appearance to just this week. Now, testimony did resume after this apparently lively discussion between the judges and lawyers, which was, by the way, out of the jury's presence about the need to get her off the stand. So let's see. Yeah, we got all of that now. Now, let's talk about another witness or somebody who's probably going to be a witness. Okay. There is somebody who posted on her Instagram, who is well known to have had claims of abuse against Diddy. She posts on her Instagram that she's in New York. What should she do? She's in New York. She actually said, quote, "Hey, New York, where do you think I should head first?" This was written yesterday on Wednesday. That person is none other than Aubrey O'Day. If you don't know who Aubrey O'Day is, she is a former Dandy Kane star. Dandy Kane was an all-female group that Diddy had under the Bad Boy label. She has for years claimed that she suffered abuse while working for him, and revealed that she was in New York. Apparently, I saw one thing says that she's supposed to testify in the trial and sometime next week. And another person said that, or another article said that she might be testifying. But to me, sounds like she's in New York to testify. It sounds like she's in New York to testify. So I think that's pretty interesting information. Just saying. Now, before we get into this, Diddy is, even though it's been a little bit, I think, clunky, Diddy has praised his attorneys as she grilled Cassie on the loving texts and the free costs. Again, if you don't know what the loving texts are, go check out the video before this one. That was part of the midday thing. And to just give you a little bit of, before we go into this, to give you a little bit of just like knowledge, what defense tried to do today is they had him go through a bunch of messages from early on in the relationship where it was very lovey-dovey. That whole like love bombing kind of, early relationship honeymoon phase kind of stuff. That's what they were reading, like very on, like 2007, 2008. And so basically the whole point of them trying to do that was trying to make it so they're showing that, hey, she was in this willingly. She was participating in these free costs willingly. None of this was coerced. Look, these are her conversations. We'll talk a little bit more about them here, but not as in depth as we did earlier today. But today Diddy said that he was proud of his lawyer. He said that he was proud of her for the work she was doing in the case. That was caught on the hot mic in the courtroom. And he's talking about referring to Anna Estavo. And here's the thing. I really like the way Anna has been handling this. And I mentioned this in the earlier show as well, when we talked about this. A lot of times when you get into cross-examination and the defense is coming up against a witness like Cassie, they try to do what they can to get the witness hostile and agitated because they want them to mess up. They want them to make a mistake. They want them to get flustered. But Anna hasn't taken that approach. She's been very like gentle tones with her, very, very nice, very respectful, very kind. And that could be partially some kind of a ploy or a strategy or a play. Or it could also be, and I'm hoping that this is really what it is. I mean, this is a woman who's defending Diddy, and I know there's people who have a lot of opinions on that. But at the end of the day, nobody can deny the fact that Diddy wasn't abusive. He's not on trial for being abusive, but you can't deny that he was. You see the videos, you hear the facts, you see what she's gone through, you see the pictures of welts on, I mean, we don't, but they do. Welts on her head, gashes on her eye, bruises all over her body. You can't deny that she is a victim of him no matter what. Now, whether or not she's a victim of the things that the federal government is accusing him of, that's a different story. That's what they're trying to prove, but she was a victim 100%. So here's just a little piece of kind of what you missed on that. So it says, you and Sean Combs, this is what she asked. You and Sean Combs were in love for 11 years, right? That was the first question from her lawyer. Cassie said, yeah. You loved him? I did. You believed he loved you? Yes. She then continued with a line of questioning that emphasized that Cassie knew the real Sean, a version that he wouldn't let the rest of the world see, but she got to see it. Sorry, that thing's making noise. In one particularly damning exchange, Cassie wrote a text to Diddy in March of 2017 saying, please don't play victim. That's all you wanted, and that's why I was upset. I love our FOs when we both want it. Okay? So what they were trying to do here is show that Cassie's saying, I love the freak offs. I want to do them. That's what the purpose of seeing this. So the jury sees this text where Cassie said she loves freak offs. Then Cassie wrote in a text, or continued on that text with talking about the freak offs a little bit more, and how she would arrange them, how she liked them, how she wanted to do them. But she said previously yesterday with the prosecution that the only reason she wanted to do them is because at the end she'd get to spend some one-on-one time with him. And we talked about the de-evolution of their relationship in the earlier video as well. So just to kind of give you a little bit of background, I still believe that it was full coercion, that she didn't really want to do it, that she was groomed and forced and coerced into doing it. But it doesn't matter what I think. You have to convince the jury of that, right? Basically, Diddy's attorney has been trying to prove that despite what she says, Cassie was not coerced into participating into these grueling freak-off sessions. And when she was asked about what she wrote, Cassie replied, "I would say that loving the FOs were just words at that point," meaning that they didn't mean anything. She was trying to keep him happy. All right. Now, before we get into what happened, what we're about to get into, but I want to share this other too, because I like to try to paint a picture for you guys as to kind of what's going on during these trial, which is why we talk about, hey, what are they wearing today? Who's there? Because we don't have photos inside the courtroom. We only get what photos happen with people going from outside to inside and vice versa, or the sketches. So Cassie has maintained this entire time a very polite demeanor, notably polite during her cross-examination. She's been smiling at Combs' attorney. However, she has occasionally expressed frustration, particularly when she felt certain questions lacked clarity or context, which has been a challenge today because it's felt that the questions that the defense has been asking have been all over the place, and the flow really hasn't been that good. At times, Cassie would ask the defense to rephrase or repeat questions to ensure she could provide a complete answer. During one exchange, she voiced concern that jurors were not hearing the full context of text messages the defense was presenting. Basically, they would select a portion of it and they wouldn't hear the full context, which is kind of a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for here? Shady. It's a little shady. We'll say. Cassie ended up saying, this isn't about what I feel is relevant right now. She asked this question. This isn't about what I feel is relevant right now, right? Cassie remarked, looking towards the judge, because there's a lot that we skipped over. Once the defense finishes its questioning, prosecutors will have an opportunity to ask Cassie additional questions, potentially allowing her to clarify and provide any context she feels is missing from the defense's portrayal. All right. So, all of that said, that is what's kind of happened up to this point. Believe it or not, there was a lot more that happened this morning, but now let's get into what happened today. All right. So first, Cassie admits being jealous of Kim Porter. We're gonna start with some relationship stuff and jealousy stuff, and we're gonna work into some of the darker stuff. Okay. So Cassie testified that her relationship with Sean Diddy Combs, she experienced feelings of jealousy towards Kim Porter. On the stand, she openly admitted to being jealous of Porter particularly because Combs continued to be publicly linked with her, who was the mother of her children. She explained that she would feel upset when Combs spent special occasions with Porter and their children instead of with her. Remember, when they started dating, they started to get together. He was still fully with Kim in a full-on relationship. So Cassie was really the side piece, for lack of a better word. Combs and Porter were in an on and on off again relationship between 94 and 07. In the months leading up to Porter's death in 18, they were also seen together with their children on several occasions. Now, Ventura's admission came after the defense attorney's questioning, where she asked if Combs had ever left a freak off with her only to go visit Porter afterwards. And Cassie confirmed that she was indeed upset by these situations when he would leave the freak offs to go spend time with Kim, acknowledging that she had wanted to build a relationship with Combs' children, even though she had been in a relationship with him for 7 years by that point. She didn't have a relationship, right? She also admitted that seeing Porter with Combs' children was often heartbreaking, and she wanted to be part of Combs' family rather than just a figure in his fantasies. She said, quote, "I had some jealousy." She also then goes into admitting that she cheated on Diddy with Kid Cudi. She said that she had a secret relationship with him while she was dating Sean. She testified that she kept a burner phone to hide the affair from him, stating, quote, "I thought it would be way too dangerous if he found out." While seeing Cudi, she continued to participate in the freak-offs, which she described as a job. She explained that the nature of her relationship with Combs was complicated. She felt compelled to maintain both relationships. Then, of course, Diddy finds out about the affair, and she talks about when he did find out about the affair. He went through her phone during one of the freak-off sessions, and upon finding out about that relationship, he became enraged and then, of course, attacked her over it. He then apparently from then on continued to frequently bring up Ventura's relationship with Kid Cudi. He would often refer to that affair during arguments, especially when she accused him of cheating. She said, quote, he brought it up quite a bit. Now, remember, during the beginning of this relationship, when she was being exclusive with him, he wasn't exclusive with her. Remember, you remember what he said yesterday? He said, Puff likes women. He likes to be with women. That was it. Although I think anybody referring to themselves in the third person, that's whatever. She said, then after he found out about the affair, though, things got a little scary. She described the fallout. She said that their relationship became more volatile. And while she was upset, she was upset when she learned that Combs had been spending time with another woman named Gina back in 2014. So he's cheating. They're both cheating. He's cheating too, but he's mad that she's doing it. So, one-sided kind of thing. The revelation of that affair prompted numerous arguments between the couple, escalating, to even more tensions in an already complex, complicated dynamic. Now, going back to when he first found out about Kid Cudi in a particularly violent incident, she testified that Combs kicked her in the back at his house in 2011 after discovering the affair. When questioned by Combs' attorney about whether the relationship with Cudi drove Mr. Combs crazy, quote unquote, she said, to my knowledge, it wasn't good. She confirmed that Sean was especially upset by the affair because of Cudi's prominence in the music industry, which compounded his feelings of betrayal because basically he was another rapper. And back at that point in time, Kid Cudi was pretty big. She also added that the suspicions of infidelity were a reoccurring issue throughout their entire relationships, with Combs often confronting her about it, even when she wasn't cheating. And usually when you have somebody constantly accusing you of cheating, oftentimes it's projection. And we know that he likes women and he cheated a lot. Then the court was presented with details of Cassie's alleged affair with actor Michael B. Jordan, which is why, by the way, he was brought up during the jury selection, because we were like, why was his name brought up? This is why. She had an alleged affair with him while she was still with Combs. She testified that back in 2015, after seeing a video of Combs with another woman named Gina at an event, while she was in South Africa filming Honey 3 Dare to Dance, she broke up with him. Diddy, who at the time was also in Cape Town for his own filming, suspected that Cassie had turned to Michael B. Jordan as a form of revenge. Now, Cassie did not directly confirm the affair on the stand. She referenced it in her 2023 civil lawsuit against Combs, saying that she began a flirtatious relationship with Jordan during her time in South Africa. In her lawsuit, she also revealed that she did, in fact, have an affair with Jordan, adding that she spent New Year's Eve with him. Now, when Combs found out about that affair, she explained that she wasn't present. She explained that she wasn't present when Combs found out about her alleged relationship. When asked about his reaction, she said, I wasn't there to see it. However, she did recall him trying to make contact with her during the incident. The court heard that Combs took matters further by calling Michael B. Jordan and allegedly threatening him, which he did, by the way, with Kid Cudi and with Alex Fine as well. But according to Cassie, Jordan then contacted her, urging her to call Combs to resolve the situation. Then there was the reconciliation and relationship continuation. So despite the tension surrounding the alleged affair, Cassie and Combs patched things up and remained together until 2018. No matter how you look at this, even if you took out the abuse, this was an incredibly toxic relationship of two people who had no business being with each other. He obviously had the upper hand in all of this, but these two people should have never, like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, should have never, ever been together. Terribly toxic. Then she describes how she broke up with him in 2015. So she testified that in 2015, when she was in South Africa filming that movie, which we talked about, where she turned to Michael B. Jordan, she explained that she initiated the breakup by sending a video of Combs with another woman at an event to a text chain that included Combs and some of his staff. Ventura said she felt deeply betrayed by him and his team for not informing her about his actions, which, I mean, it's kind of badass. Like, just send him the video. Like, I know about this. During this time, she also took the step of blocking his phone number while she was focused on her work in South Africa. So, good for her. Now, if you guys remember yesterday and earlier on in this, yesterday we talked about an incident where she says that she had witnessed a friend of hers being dangled over off of a balcony on a 17-story high building. Her friend Brianna Bana Bongalan, goes by Bana. And so they came in during cross and suggested that Cassie didn't personally witness this incident where Combs allegedly dangled her friend off of the balcony of a 17th floor balcony. She said, quote, "Isn't it true you learned about this incident after the fact?" And her response was, "I saw what I saw." She then presented Cassie a text message that she had sent to Combs' chief of staff, Christina Coram, shortly after the incident. The message appeared to indicate that Ventura had learned about the altercation after it occurred. In her testimony to the prosecution on the previous day, she described waking up to find Combs holding her friend over the balcony railing before throwing her onto the patio furniture. She also questioned Ventura about whether she was under the influence of substances that night, and she testified that she couldn't remember if she had used substances before falling asleep or sleep earlier that day, though she acknowledged the possibility. So basically, what their point here. Before I do that, let me do this. She also testified that she sent a text message to his chief of staff, which we talked about. She admitted that while she had heard about the incident, that she ended up admitting while she heard that she had heard about the incident after it happened, she still reached out to some of Combs' inner circle. She goes, "I did text that. There were other crazy things that happened. However, she couldn't recall the name of the person who she had sent the message to. I saw what I saw, so I don't know." So that sounds a little kind of a gray area, but their whole point of trying to do that is basically to discredit her. Like, you said this thing, but now you're saying this thing, and trying to kind of poke holes in her credibility. So that's the goal of that. Then it gets into substance questions. There was a very challenging issue with substances. So Cassie testified that Diddy once contacted the suppliers, her dealers in LA, to stop supplying her with any more substances. She said, quote, "At some point it happened, although she was unsure if it occurred in 2016, as was suggested by the attorney." She also acknowledged that Combs recommended she seek help for her substance issues, but clarified that his concern was more about her doing substances with others instead of him. Because apparently he would get explosive when she did substances and he wasn't there to do them also. She described his reaction to this as being explosive. She added that he instructed his suppliers to stop supplying her, basically to intensify his control over her behavior. Now, here's something that was very interesting that I found out. Apparently, Sean Combs, OD'd on painkillers in 2012. Apparently, this played a significant role in his mood swings, the painkillers that he was taking. She said, on the day of the overdose, they had participated in a freak off and visited an S club. Later, Combs went to a party at the Playboy Mansion without Cassie. That evening, Ventura took him to the hospital where they learned that he had overdosed. She said, quote, "From what he told me, he took a very strong opiate that night, but we didn't know what was happening, so we took him to the hospital." During cross by the defense attorney, Ventura was asked if Combs had ever overdosed and whether she herself had struggled with addiction, and Ventura said yes to both questions. When asked specifically if Combs' mood swings were tied to his painkiller use, she affirmed it was part of it. She further confirmed that he was extremely dependent on opiates for a period of time, and his mood worsened when he didn't have access to them. Now, real quick side note that I learned pretty recently about this. This happened, I believe, in February of 2012. Okay. On February 11th, 2012, somebody else famous OD'd and died, and that was Whitney Houston. So same time this was going on. The way the articles kind of made it sound like they might have even been in the hospital around the same time, or I know that I think Whitney was found, but the way that they made it sound like, I don't know if that's the case or not, but I'm just letting y'all know. You can do your own due diligence on that. It's not overly pertinent, just an interesting fact. So then she kind of gets into the side effects from her drug or her substance use, describing serious health issues related to her use, particularly early on in 2017, where she became very ill. She lost all sense of taste and smell and experienced numbness in her arm, along with those dissociative effects from ketamine use. She confirmed that Sean Combs noticed her symptoms and suggested that she seek medical attention. Though she didn't disclose every detail of her substance use to Combs throughout their relationship, she did admit that both she and Combs were heavily involved in using things that they should, illegal substances. Now, here's something that's really, really interesting. Like I said, we're going to get more into this. She talked about the 2016 incident, right? The infamous at this point hotel footage. And Cassie suggested, or the lawyer suggested, I should say, that Combs was actually experiencing withdrawal symptoms in the days leading up to that March 2016 assault. I find that interesting because I fortunately have never been through a situation where I've used illegal substances and have gone through withdrawal, anything like that. The worst I've ever done is something that you smoke or eat in a gummy, nothing more than that ever. But I understand that you can become very violent, very agitated, and that doesn't excuse it, but it lends a little bit of background and understanding if that was the case. Now, what happened is she reviewed a series of text messages from March 3rd between Combs and Cassie, in which the couple discussed him feeling unwell, which the defense attorney did imply that these were symptoms that were consistent with withdrawal. Now, Cassie said that she doesn't specifically remember him going through withdrawal at that time, but she did acknowledge that the text messages appeared to suggest that he was sick during that period. Defense also focused on Cassie's role. Now, they did this a little bit before lunch too, but they did it after as well. They focused on her role in the freak-offs and text messages, which led up to that 2016 hotel incident. So basically, defense is sharpening its focus, honing in on that particular incident. Because remember, that video is a key piece, cornerstone of the prosecution's case. So defense, if they want any chance, has to dismantle all of this, which, again, I'm not convinced they've done that. But basically, they wanted to sharpen its focus on her role in planning and agreeing to the freak-offs, including all of those incidences which led up to that assault at the Intercontinental Hotel. Now, by highlighting a series of these text messages between the two of them, they've suggested that Cassie was actively involved in the decision-making process and expressed willingness, even eagerness in times at the freak-offs. And we're going to talk about some of these right now. So the defense carefully parsed through text messages, suggesting that Ventura may have been the one to initiate or reciprocate Combs' request for freak-offs. There was one text from July of 13 showing Cassie raising the idea, writing, "I wish we could have FO'd before you left." The defense used this to imply that Cassie had agency in the encounters and may have been a willing participant in Then in a 2017 message, she also referred to the encounters as loving FOs, adding context to her earlier statement. She said, "I love our FOs when we both wanted." However, Cassie testified that by 2017, those words had just become that, words, indicating a shift in her feelings from the encounters. Now, again, their narrative is basically, at this point, they're trying to position these texts as evidence of mutual desire, consensual encounters, repeatedly emphasizing that Combs' actions were not coercive, but reflective of a couple in a long-term complicated relationship. However, Cassie expressed that she felt pressure to maintain the relationship and keep Combs happy, so often, which included often participating in activities she didn't necessarily want to engage in. Cassie also acknowledged that she sometimes felt compelled to take part in freak-offs because she enjoyed spending one-on-one time with him afterwards, but clarified that this was driven more by a desire to please him than by a genuine interest in the acts themselves. Basically, she would want to do them only for the sake of what happened at the end, where she got to spend time one-on-one with him. That's what she has said yesterday. Then you have the push and pull of jealousy and control, where Estavo highlighted, that's the defense attorney, highlighted moments where Cassie voiced frustration and jealousy, particularly over his relationship with other women. In one 2013 text, she told Combs, "You're making me look like a side piece, and that's not what I thought I was." Cassie, because at that point, remember, they've been together. They met when 06, so they've been together for a few years at this point, like 4 or 5 years, 6 years at this point. She said, "You're making me look like a side piece, and that's not what I thought I was." Cassie testified that Combs made it clear from the start he didn't want her to see other people, but the same rules didn't apply to him. She recalled confronting him after seeing social media posts connecting him to other women. He didn't care. He flaunted it right out in the open. She also testified that after a few years in the relationship, she began to long for a deeper connection with Sean, but felt that he wouldn't let her in. She described becoming increasingly frustrated with him, spending time with his ex, Kim Porter, and his children, particularly during holidays and vacations. This emotional distance contributed to her feelings of jealousy and frustration. And then at the same time, Cassie admitted that she was eager to participate in the freak-offs when they were mutually desired. But despite all of this, she also acknowledged the complexity of her feelings, noting that while she may have agreed to participate in the acts, they were often driven by, again, a sense of obligation and desire to maintain the relationship. And this is, it's such a convoluted, it's also convoluted, guys. It's also convoluted. Also convoluted. Real quick, I want to make an address because I'm looking over at Instagram and I see people asking about substances in the baby oil. Cassie confirmed today there was no substances in the baby oil. The baby oil was only baby oil. There was nothing in them. It was a rumor. It was not true. She confirmed it today. It was, and then, by the way, for anybody who's listening, if you are on Instagram or TikTok, just a real quick side note, course, make sure to follow if you don't already. But this is being recorded on Instagram, or I'm sorry, this is being recorded on YouTube. So you can go back and watch this entire thing if you came in late. And if you missed the midday recap, that too is on YouTube for you to be able to watch. And then these notes at some point this evening will go on Substack so you can read them if you don't want to watch, just so y'all know. But there was no substances in those. Now, Combs' behavior, let's talk about the impact of Combs' behavior on Cassie's decision-making. The defense's examination has painted a picture of Cassie, again, as an active participant in this relationship, which complicates the narrative of coercion. Remember, that's what they're trying to prove. Prosecution's trying to prove that she was coerced. Defense is trying to prove that she was a willing participant. However, Cassie's testimony has also suggested that her decisions to participate in certain encounters were influenced by Combs' repeated requests and her emotional dependence on him. While she spoke sometimes about, this was brought up a few times today, while she sometimes spoke about loving the freak offs, she made it very clear that, again, it was driven by the need to keep the relationship intact, not necessarily a desire to engage in the acts. And as the trial continues, the defense appears to be focusing more and more on the idea that the relationship between the two of them was complicated with elements of love and consent, while the prosecution, again, is trying to work to establish the coercive and abusive aspects of these interactions. Now, let's talk about the text messages that happened before that hotel assault. I should have actually had this moved up on my list. So there was a text exchange on March 3rd, 2016, which led up to a freak off. Some of these messages were previously shown to a jury by prosecutors during her direct examination. In their exchanges, Ventura initially discussed potential plans with her friends before sending Combs a message that read, quote, "We can have fun. I don't want you thinking I don't want to." That's what she said to him as they were setting up details for their night together. She suggested that Ventura was the one proposing and encouraging the freak off. However, Ventura pushed back on defense, clarifying that Combs repeatedly asked her about plans for that evening, and she interpreted these inquiries as his way of suggesting the freak off. She goes, "When you're with someone for so long, you know what they mean when they text certain things." And my wife and I have been together for, started dating in 2006, I'll be 20 next year, and I know exactly what they mean. There's certain looks, certain things. You can say things a certain way, and it's exact. When you look at it on the surface level, it might not mean anything, but you know what it means when you say certain things. Everybody knows that. Makes sense. Defense also focused on Combs' repeated request. The defense also focused on how Combs' repeated request for the freak offs led to the videotaped assault. She explained that she wanted to focus on the premiere of her film, which was The Perfect Match, which featured her alongside Terrence Jenkins and Paula Patton. But despite her reservations about engaging in the freak off during her promotional duties for the movie, she testified that she agreed after Combs kept asking her over and over and over again. The series of text messages and the back and forth between the two of them are central to the defense's argument as they emphasize the dynamics of the relationship and emotional pressures Cassie felt. And that, my friends, is the second half of what happened today. Insane. It is so much. I don't know how that woman's got any energy left by the end of the day. I hardly have any energy taking after keeping up with them. It's a lot. It's a lot. Anyways, that's what happened today. Again, if you came in late, you missed any of this, because I know that when we started, guys, this is my TikTok friends. TikTok, I know that when we first started, we were down to like 600 people in here, and now we're up to 2,100. So if you missed it and you want to see the rest, you can jump over to YouTube. It is the same name, Just in the Nick of Crime, and watch this entire thing from start to finish and the midday recap. I would encourage you to do so if you guys want to be doing that. And eventually, sometime today, I will get these out on Substack for people who would prefer to read than watch. Again, same name, same handle on every single platform. Nevertheless, my Instagram folks, please hit that follow button. I appreciate every one of you. Sun Racing, I appreciate you. Sun Racing, I appreciate you in here. I see you every day. I notice you, and I appreciate you. Always bring great commentary. YouTube, make sure that follow button, subscribe on YouTube, and make sure the bell notification's on, because I've been going live twice a day. But again, quick reminder, next week it will be down to once at the end of the day. Have a great rest of the evening, and TikTok, don't go away. I'll be right there for a second.